All right, guys, so time for an update on the 55 hardtop. I'm not going to make the show. I put lots of hours in, lots of time in. I got lots of stuff done. It doesn't look like it, but I just, I basically overdid it on straining I got my arthritis flared up, basically, is what I did. So I've had to slow down. I had my hand so swelled up, I had to put an ace bandage on it for 2 days. So I've been kind of limited on what I can do. But today it feels a little bit better because haven't worked on it in a couple of days heavily. I have worked on stuff, but just not heavily, and try not to use the left hand at all. But that's where I'm at. I just kind of dialed it back because of that. I had lots of hiccups, lots of little issues, lots of problems. Trying to make things just right takes time. And like sanding and buffing the door jambs, that was pretty much, by the time both door jambs were done, it's 8 hours just in sanding and polishing door jambs and door hinges. So something that probably didn't need to be done for the show, but it's one of them deals, once the car's together, it had been a lot more difficult to go back and sand and buff those later with everything on, like the windlace and stuff. So I just decided to go ahead and do it. I knew it was probably going to kill it for me to make the show, but I didn't care. The weather has not been cooperating. We've had wind, bad wind, for at least 3 days, 4 days now. So I've got the top of the deck lid sanded and ready to paint, and I can't paint because it's so windy. So I'm just stuck. So I did move on to the doors. I've got this driver's door is fully sanded. It's ready to buff. The other one needs sanded, which I may end up doing that today. And I can get the doors hung on the car. And once the doors are hung, I can start bolting parts on the doors. The weather stripping, and which I'm going to put the weather stripping on before I put the doors on. I learned that a long time ago. So it's just easier to put your door weather strips on the door while it's off the car before you put it on there. So that may be what I do today. Now, I could have had the quarter glasses in and some of the side trim and the emblems and all that on, but I want to go back and repolish these quarters again to try to get some of that texture back out of them. I had this sanded and polished where it was mirror finish, just absolutely flat. Now that urethane paint has shrunk up, it's tightened up on me, so it has a little bit of texture to it in places, a little bitty lumpy spots. So it kind of needs to be redone. I don't really want to sand it again, but I may have to. But what I'm going to try to do first is just polish it. I'm going to go to number 2 and then go to 3. But I want to try to polish it out first to see if I can get some of that texture out of it. I'm thinking it may work. But if it doesn't work, I'll have to end up going back over it with some sandpaper to flatten it back off, because I want the quarters touched back up for sure. I'm going to rebuff the whole car, but I definitely want to get the quarters done first. And then at that point, I can start bolting all the side glass and trim and emblems and all that stuff on. And then it'll really start looking like a 55 again. But the upholstery, that's what really done me in. Now, I've done upholstery stuff on cars before, not stitching upholstery, just like putting covers on and building door panels, that type of stuff. I've done that stuff before, but I have never done Bel Air 55 armrests front and rears before. That was a mess. That is putting it lightly. It took 3 hours on one front armrest to get it, well, I would say perfect. It actually probably is close to perfect without getting wrinkles and hiccups in it and getting that stitch seam just right. And I learned something because I made a mistake on the rear armrest, which I tried to upholster, and it had bumps in it and I couldn't get them out. And I'll throw that video clip in at the end. It's definitely for you guys with Bel Air armrests. If you're going to be in the same shape, it's going to help you out. And basically what I'm talking about is when I called Ciadel and ordered my interior kit, I bought front and rear pre-sewn seat covers, pre-sewn windlace, and the matching upholstery. I got the headliner done, they stitched it, and they stitched the sun visors to match. Now this is imitation suede, I don't know what it's called, but it looks and feels like suede, but it's not, which is lighter on the wallet. But the sun visors are done in the same suede-ish material, but it has the black Alante binding around it with the finger pads to match. So, you know, the upholstery all matches. Now the other thing that I did at the same time was I ordered, I don't remember if it was 2 yards or 3 yards, of the Alante black and the gray pattern straw cloth. It's original to what the car had. The gray pattern straw cloth was right off the trim tag. That's what this car originally had. So the other thing she told me on the phone was I would need her to pre-stitch the armrests for the front doors and the rear armrests for the passengers in the rear. She was wanting me to send her the rear and front armrest for them to cover and then send back to me. And I couldn't afford it. I don't remember what the price was. I just couldn't afford it. It was all I could do to afford what I got at the time. So anyway, I couldn't do it. Now I know why, because she did say those are very difficult to get right, and I believe her. But my very first front armrest took 3 hours to do. I had to call in the big guns. I had to call in my mom and dad down here to kind of give me some pointers and, you know, tell me what to put on first or where to start. So 3 hours later, one's done, and that is including, you know, I had to clean up the armrest base. And those Bel Air front armrests, mine were original. You can buy those new rubber bases, but they were expensive. These were still in good shape. It's just right where the cup goes in, they had kind of raised up a little bit from age, the ends like raised up. So what I did was I went in there with a belt sander and I just leveled them down a little bit. It sanded off real easy. And that just basically made it level, because if I'd have covered it, it had little raised areas where that rubber had raised from age. But 3 hours in that one armrest, and that's cleaning the base, the whole armrest, and foaming it, and then covering it. I don't think it'll take as long on the other one, which I already have it cleaned and I've already foamed it. It just needs the cover put on. The one where I really screwed up was the rear armrest, and I figured out what I needed to do, and then when we done the front armrest, doing what I learned I needed to do, it turned out awesome. So I had to basically take that rear armrest that I upholstered apart, and it ruined the foam, so I've got to go back, clean all that crap off, clean all that glue off, and then go back and refoam it. So I've got backtracking to do. Basically, between my hand and the upholstery, that is what put me behind. And it was to the point where I probably knew I wasn't going to make the show, and I was good with it. The deadline is just for me to get out here and work my butt off to try to get the car further along, which I did. It didn't look like it, but I did. And I learned a lot more stuff, which is really cool. So you've seen me sand and buff this jam. So this one's all done. The windlace is all done. This is the coolest part. I've got the gauge pod in that I fabbed. It is all in and done. I just need to wire it. I've got the A-pillar in on that side. All the windlace is done. The jam's sanded and buffed. The hinges are done. I got the silver paint put in the speed holes and the hinges. This is for the first time with everything painted. This is the first time I'm getting to see it all put together up here, and oh man, is it beautiful. I love it. I did have a buddy, it's been several years ago, I think I was doing body work on this gauge pod I made, and he stopped by and he was like, "What are you working on?" And I told him and showed it to him, and I set it up there for him, and he goes, "Well, that's going to be hard to see around." If you can't see in a glass house, two-door hardtop, I mean, there's no post here, and the wing window frame stuff is real thin. He was driving a new model Chevy truck. I'm sure that A-pillar is a lot thicker than what that is, because my wife's car that she drives every day, the plastic cover on that A-pillar trim is 4 inches wide. I know that's not 4 inches, and this has space in between it. So it's just one of them deals where somebody's always got to say something, you know, negative. They got to find a negative in something. And at the end of the day, it's my car. I really don't care. So there's that. So I'm proud of it. I mean, it's come a long way, man. It was a lot of work. It's basically 4 hours, 3.5, 4 hours on that side, 3.5, 4 hours on this side. So basically, sanding and buffing the jams was pretty much a full 8-hour workday just on that. But now that it's done, I'm glad it's done, because I won't get counted off at a show for that. And it's one of them deals where it would have bugged me if I wouldn't have done it and then put everything together and then had to take it back apart later to do it. So very, very proud of it. But I'm kind of stuck at this point because it's so windy today. I can't paint the top of the deck lid and stuff. So I'm kind of, right now, I'm just kind of lost. I really don't know what to do. If it wasn't windy, I'd paint this today. But with it windy, I don't think by the time I got 4 coats on it with all the, you know, the tack time in between, the flash time, I don't think it would, I'd have a ton of trash in it. You know what I mean? And this is the wrong time of year to try to find for a day that's not windy, because it's the changing season time. So it's probably going to be windy from now on. So I just kind of got to figure out what my new game plan is. But now that I'm not in a hurry to make the show, I can lay back on it a little bit. So I do have a new game plan mostly for the car. I've decided, since the hood is going to take a lot of work, and the cross brace I custom fabbed, and the hood latch support brace, I think I did a video of that. I showed all the bodywork and stuff. This is all in Z-Chrome. So all that stuff needs to be blocked. Then it needs to be primed and then sanded and then painted. But this hood I thought was in final prime. It's not. It's in its first coat of primer because I've done some putty work up here. So this thing needs to be dry blocked with 220 down and then re-primed again. So the hood and all the other parts to go with it is, in the reality, is probably going to be about 5 days worth of work just on the hood. Another reason why I wouldn't have made the show, which I could have probably left the hood off of it and been okay, but it just, you know, when your hand gives out, that's all you can do. And I know you guys with arthritis, or you know what I'm talking about. There's sometimes you want to do something, you just can't. So, and that's the way it was. But I'm at the point now where I've got this door wet sanded. It is ready to start buffing. That door needs sanded. I couldn't get to it last night. I sanded this one, but I didn't sand that one because of the way they're set in here. And I had a mess in here. I cleaned up this morning, so I put everything away, mostly. So now I can move that table, move this stuff out of the way so I can get around that other door. But once these doors are buffed, I can hang them. They're ready to hang because the jambs are done. So the other problem is, I need to, what I've decided to do is when I buff the doors, I'm going to go ahead and hit the quarters again. This car needs to be completely rebuffed again. It's got scratches in it for me coming out here and wiping it off. I usually blow it off with my leaf blower to get all the dust, loose dust off of it. And then I'll use a brand new microfiber on the soft side and I'll wipe it off. I'll do about half the car and then I'll go in and rinse the rag out and then come out and finish it off. But, you know, it always puts light scratches in the paint, which we'll polish out with some polish. So I knew I was going to polish it later because urethane paint shrinks tremendously over time. And that's exactly what happened. I'd had this thing sanded and buffed and it looked like a mirror. Like you could read the instructions on the back of even the smallest thing. But now it's tightened up, so it needs to be buffed again. Now, that's kind of why I've been holding back on putting any of the emblems and trim and all that on, is because I need to buff it. So since I'm going to have the buffing stuff out for the doors, I'm going to go ahead and hit the quarters, at least the quarters right now. I'm going to do the roof and everything again, but I'm going to go ahead and do the quarters. That way I can get my emblems on and start putting some of the trim on, but I still have to paint some of the trim. The long quarter moldings that go down, the Bel Air moldings and the door point and the lower paint divider down there has some little lines in it. Now from the factory, those were white. The upper paint divider up here has some little indents in it, and those were black. I'm leaving those black, but I'm doing the same car paint on it. So when I paint the deck lid, I'm going to paint that paint divider. But the side moldings, the inlays, that are the coves that are going to be painted, I've decided to use the Galaxy Gray Pearl, which is what I've got on my, you know, my pedal assembly housings and the heater box and the cup holder system that was a Kleenex dispenser. So I've got enough of that paint left because I bought it in a quart. It's base coat, clear coat. So I've decided to go ahead and put the gray in that inlay of that trim. I don't want white, so I think the gray will be a nice contrast to the black. I don't want to do black. That's too much black. The wheels are black. The body's black. That's all I need, is all the trim inlays to be black, you know. So I'm not doing that. I'm going to put a color in there to kind of give it a little kick. It needs it, but that's the plan. I just kind of really want to focus right now on getting the doors buffed and the quarters buffed and start getting all the trim painted, inlays painted, which I can do in just a few hours, and then get all that stuff put on. I can put the quarter windows in, the door glasses in, get everything adjusted, and rock and roll, man. And once the trim is on the side of the car with the doors and the side glass in it, it's going to look like a 55 Chevy without the front clip on it at that point. Now, the new plan for Saturday, me and my wife are going to the show Saturday. I'm going to get there before the gates open so I can get in line and not have to stand a half a mile away. But we're going to go to the car show and look at the cars and stuff. And then usually when I go to that show every year, I'm usually home by around 2:30-ish in the afternoon, somewhere around there. So my plan is when we get back, we're going to put the engine and trans in the car because I'll have her to help me. I'm going to need somebody to guide that transmission down in the hole because I always put my engine and trans together to put them in. That way she can guide it in there and I don't hit that firewall. That firewall, it would be devastating to chunk the paint on that firewall, especially down low, because there's really not a tape break down there. And when I sanded and buffed the firewall, I went all the way down underneath to the pinch weld. Even the pinch weld got all blocked out and polished. So it would be devastating. I've decided on the tail shaft of the trans, I'm going to wrap a towel around it and then tape it, and have her basically hold it and guide it down in there while I'm working the hoist and rocking it forward and getting it down in there. But I am hoping by Sunday afternoon I will be lighting the car off. That's the new plan. But the overall thing on the car to finish it up is I'm just going to keep working on it, and the goal now is to try to get it done by the end of the month. So by March 1st, I'm hoping the car, I can get in it, drive it up here to the store, I can drive it downtown, I can go anywhere in it. I'm just not going to have the hood on it. The hood's going to be the last thing I jack with, because that hood, there's going to be a week's worth of work in just the hood. And I just don't want to focus on it right now, because the hood would be the last thing I put on anyway. When I build my cars and get them running and start driving and working the bugs out, I usually leave the hoods off so it's easier access to get in there to work on something. So that's what I want to do there. And then the hood will be the last thing finished up to put on. But I know it doesn't look it, but it is a lot further along. There's stuff in the house that's finished up. So I have to finish some of this paint and some of the buff, and then just go crazy with putting stuff together. But the wind is killing me. It sucks, man. Like, I am so fired up to paint this deck lid and some of these other pieces, and I can't do it. So that's where I'm at, guys. That's pretty much it. That's the new game plan. Didn't make the show, but I know some of my buddies, man, they're happy about it, because they're the Debbie Downers and the negative Nancy's that's all they want to see is you fail. And that's, some of them guys, I call them my buddies. Every time I've ever built a car, they come over here, the first thing they do is you would just about think they're going to pull a magnifying glass out of their pocket. I've had buddies, they still do it to this day, will come over here or see my car somewhere, and they will really just almost get down on their knees at the back of the car to look down it. They're looking for that flaw. And these are guys that don't even do their own paint and body work. It drives me insane. But I don't do that to people's cars. That's just me. But whatever. I can hear my wife pulling in for lunch, so I'm gonna have a little lunch with my wife and our dog, and I guess try to figure out what I'm gonna do. I really am dying to paint today. I'll let you know. Thanks for watching.